welcome back to another devlog. This is number 24. Okay, so that means 6 months of working on this project, about 40 hours a week full time, and we just keep going, till the economy improves and I get a job. You never stop. Okay, so starting on Monday. Um, From last week, I began my work on the housekeeping and cleanup. I had a laundry list of bugs to take care of, and I had several goals for the week. I wanted to refactor my unit testing system from lessons I've learned about structuring scenes in a more componentized manner. So the whole scene is the whole scene is composed of many different scenes, and they all have different ones that are persistent that stick around, like for the game manager. Other ones that are just have to do with the level. Other ones that just have maybe the enemies or the characters, and they're all loaded in to compose an entire scene. So I wanted to redesign my unit testing system to work around that concept. Um, so what I've done here, I've um, I've reconstructed my code to have like a global. Um, well, first here it's all controlled by scriptable object data model. So basically, I have a global one, and it pretty much holds references to scenes. And this global one loads the main testing scene, which has the game manager, and every other one is kind of scoped down to the individual classes. Like I have the AI test class, so I have AI test scenes. And in the scenes, this scope, this scope is for the level, and this level scene will stick around through all the tests of the AI test class. So that's how I structured it. And then these reload scenes, every time a individual test executes, these these scenes will be reloaded, which means the player position will be reset and all its variables. Same thing with the AI. So if it's over here on the next test, it'll go back to where it was. And I've constructed this. I've really reworked and with the help of AI, I've understand how to do this properly so that, you know, this case executes once for the whole, all testing, and then lower its scope each stage. This one executes once for the whole class, a teardown setup for each class, and then you have your, at the bottom, you have your tests for each class. Um, so that took a lot of uh, doing to get a new system in place, and from there, I began fixing all the old existing tests, like just basic movement and shooting, equipping. Um, so each time, this is why I'm doing tests, because I went back to the shooting and tried to get the shooting working, and of course shooting was broken, and I couldn't figure out why. I I eventually figured out it was um, in Vector's class, whereas it's the wait for next frame. If you're on the scene view, it'll just sit there, won't do anything. But if you go to a game view, it'll start working, and then the equip working. So trying to figure out for shooting why wasn't it equipping the weapon. Um, I got that sorted out. So got all the original tests working, and I tried to do a Unity Cloud build to run my test to see if it was just a one-off before I didn't have the proper scene manager uh, scene references included in the build. But that's not correct. I had them this time, and it still didn't work. But so that really doesn't work. but that's okay because the Unity Cloud builds is it's better suited for like a team of developers when you want to push your build and validate all your tests on the server against other changes that might have happened to the code. For a solo dev, I can live without it. I can just rely on the in-editor tests for now, just to have this. Um, so after that, on Tuesday, I started building a new unit test class for the AI behavior feature. Um, so in order to do that, I needed a way to actually record and not do so manually with the controller, but kind of just have a way to record the player's position and location and kind of structure that so when I hit these buttons, it would actually implement logic to like move the player in range and out of range, and also setting data like just mark so my unit test can know like at this point, run an assertion. Um, so so having these test managers again and pairing them these model behaviors, pairing them with end units to actually track certain data that I can actually query inside the end unit test alongside the test is kind of essential to have a companion component running along the test. So this AI test manager, it has we have now we have data, so you can see I can actually run it in the regular mode and then actually set up the test and then capture different data points here. So in the first capture, the player is at this position at this timestamp. Next one, and at certain other values that I'm tracking as well, whether like was attacked, or if it's just a mark that I want the end unit to say, okay, nothing really happened, but I want you to evaluate the state at this particular timestamp. So this new system is a good tool for tracking down some of the bugs in my list. I was actually able to, through this method, I was actually one of the last tests I did with was attacked. I was actually able to pin down a few very difficult issues to actually reproduce consistently with just the manual controller. By doing recording, I was able to replay over and over again the issue that I was seeing and then actually track down the behavior and code. So this is an invaluable tool here. Well worth creating and getting it to work. Overall, initially I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna test every single state and transition and the whole state machine. I'm gonna write a test for everything pretty much to test out the entire AI behavior. But I kind of stepped back on that. It's like for several reasons. The important part is that I have a testing structure, a testing class around the feature. So I decided just to write a handful of tests in order to see, kind of to kind of give me confidence that the feature is working in its basic sense, and just and have the structure so in the future if I do spot something or I don't feel confident in the actual it's functional enough, I can actually go in and write more tests around it. So it's there, and I have the structure and I have the tools to add more tests later on down the line. So that's kind of my approach. Otherwise, I'd be adding 15, 20, 30 tests just for this AI, and it has kind of it's more to maintain. It has diminishing returns, I think. So I moved on to the next feature, which was testing out the cover feature. So when the player um, moves. Does he take cover and things like that? So um, I had to rework things because now from this simple level, I needed a new environment. So it wasn't scoped to globally. I had to do an environment just for this new cover test class. So you'll see that later. Um, but again, while I was trying to do cover testing features, something else was broken. So at the end of the day, I was doing a binary search on my repo trying to figure out where it broke and what's going on. And it's pretty time consuming, but I finally pinned it down once again. It was related to the actual equipping. It's the invector system once again. It was using wait for end of frame for this particular thing when you get cover. And if you're in the scene view, it won't do anything until you switch to the game view. So going through my whole repo all the way to the end, it's like, okay, finally tracking it down. So on Wednesday, I just decided to apply the same fix for the weapon equipping and change all of the end of frame waits for the coroutines to use wait for next fixed update, which allows the scene view to operate exactly the same in the scene view as it does in the game view. So um, Wednesday, I got the basic cover test working, um, and I tried to run all the tests together, but it seemed like every time I add something new, I'd run all the tests together, and then something was broken. It wouldn't run like it would before. So it's constantly changing the system, trying to get it stable, and it's just this back and forth, adding more tests, changing more things, and then regression testing the unit testing system. It's always an expectation where you change one thing, you come back and try to run all the tests together, and just it's like once I would like everything you add new tests and everything just to run as it did before. More specifically, it's something this I'm still having this weird problem. One of these tests in particular, the um, the scriptable object data that's controlling this test, it's getting I would say corrupted or changed to values that I didn't record or put in there, and it's not working. It's a very odd issue. I'll have to track down later, but it keeps happening. I've made backups of the actual scriptable object data, but the way scriptable objects works, it's something weird going on. I can't really pin it down right now, but so I have to keep coming back and re-recording the data and in order to get this particular test to work. So uh, all that said, um, I was able to get the cover tests working, and let's see. Yeah, it was just a process getting these monosystem behavior managers to work, and it's like a delicate dance where you're initializing the scene and you have to initialize it in a certain process way where everything works right. So I had to adapt um, my classes, like my game manager, just slightly in order to accommodate and my character and my enemy and all sorts of other things. It's just slightly in order to accommodate automated testing. So just a lot of testing and trial and error. Um, so got the cover test working, and I moved on to actually working on another feature, which was loading the game cycle, loading the game from the beginning of the menu screen and loading into the game. Once again, I this is why I'm doing testing, because working with it, all of a sudden the mouse input's not working. I can't click the menu items. It's not the mouse interaction is not uh, working. So a lot of testing, and pretty much the solution was to start with a bunch of disabled components and then enable them at another time so they initialize properly, because I'm using an underlying system, not my own system, and it just wasn't it just wasn't setting references correctly. The process, because I've changed up the loading process where the menu doesn't already exist in the screen at start. You have to load it into from the game manager. Um, so while doing all this, I I noticed a couple things that I want to take care of later because I was working with the menu system. I have some duplicate parity going on here, which is not ideal. One of them is for the menu system. I have, and another one that's similar is for the pause menu manager. I have this canvas with a bunch of UI objects here, as you can see, and the pause menu exists for a 2D version and also for a VR version. And the problem with that is if I have a bug, I'm working on the 2D for testing or whatever, I change something here, inside here, and I fix that, and then I go over and I'm working another day in VR, it's not going to reflect over here. So I need to abstract out all the commonalities into its own prefab. So a change reflects in another part. So anything that's not common, it can be at a higher level. That's fine, like the canvas. It needs to have a different configuration. So I need to do that for the pause menu and the main menu. And also I want to do something abstraction where I'm not managing two separate cameras because these are basically the same except for one component that controls whether on the camera whether it's whether it's an XR camera setup. So I want to abstract all the common features, so I'm not managing two and fixing one and the other is still broken. That's just not good design practice or principles right there. So that's for later. That's on my to-do list after I get coverage of the major features of my project so far. So um, that being said, on Thursday, was really starting from scratch with the main menu UI and just, starting over again, breaking it down, trying to find the issue. I guess one of the things I to say is like, if you feel like overwhelmed and you start to panic, like, oh, I have to start over again. It's not, you don't want to erase your legacy work. You just want to keep it to the side and kind of start from the beginning and reconstruct, trying to track down the issue and just methodically keep testing, and then eventually you get to you find the trail, the clue, and then you get to the solve the problem. And instead of throwing the old solution in the garbage, you just bring back the legacy solution and you apply the fix, and there you go. So that's how I did it. I have my old solution and everything's working right with adjusting and working with the new testing system. So loading the menu, it's a little different because the actual game manager is doing the loading of the scene, and it's not like it's not being controlled by the end unit loading like we have here. So I have a little bit of slight adaptations in order to handle that. Also, I had to come up with another kind of system, kind of based off um, my player data tracking. Instead, I had to come up with a new system that would just track actual mouse click positions in a 2D canvas over time with marks as well. So slightly adapting the player record system into a new test manager. I can actually now, just click on the canvas and it'll actually record those values. So figuring out how to do that. I got it all working with actual playback, unit test playback. So figuring out how how to make the how to make Unity actually take this data and actually automate from this data, actually tell the system, instead of me clicking the mouse, have this, how to have Unity click, you do a mouse click action, you know, on a 2D plane, not just for unit testing, but also being able to play it back in the actual game. It was a bit tricky to figure out, but it'll be you figure out how to do these things, and then later uh, it'll be a good tool to actually reuse at a certain time instead of manually having testing and click through the menu. So AI was a big help in actually providing, guiding me through and providing me how to do it. It's not perfect. The solutions it's giving me, it didn't actually work right off the bat, but testing around, working with it, I was able to figure out how to do these things, automate the mouse clicks. Um, so one of the issues also, um, if you have like a free aspect canvas and you're clicking around, you're recording, if you actually change the screen size in the game view, that it'll still read the position, but it'll be off because you recorded it in a certain aspect in this position. But if you run it again, it'll actually click up here and there'll be nothing there. So there's not actually a way for you to tell Unity at runtime, hey, I recorded in this resolution, so set the game view back to this resolution for testing. It can't do that. It's not possible. So in order to, compromise over convenience, I recorded at, 920 by 1080. And if this is not set in the game view, it'll just throw an error, in the test, and it's like, hey, this is a requirement. You have to, if you want to run this test, you have to set your game view to this resolution. But, figuring that out, it's like a process. Like, okay, AI tries to give you the solution, but it doesn't tell you that, you can't just tell Unity to set the resolution at runtime of what you recorded at. So, lastly, on Friday, I was starting to do tests for starting the same process, a new feature to do tests on in-game scene loading traversal that I did from a few weeks ago. So that's pretty much where we're going to start for next week. So as of now, it's actually going quicker because I have my my new unit test system and all these different previous tools, and all these issues I've had to go through to sort out. Now that I can actually, if something happens, it's like less and less challenging to add more new tests because I've already kind of figured all the mysteries out, and now I have a working system. So it's just a matter of adapting, previous classes and models, and adjusting them slightly for different purposes. At the end of the day, is all this pain and trouble worth it? And yes, I would argue yes, because not having to guess if everything is still working, like after like a month or two after you come back to it, not having to say, I assume this functionality is still working. Where you can just say, okay, periodically you can just say, I haven't worked with, player cover, in 5 months. Is it still functional? Instead of going back and setting up everything, new scenes, character, and testing it manually and testing, each different test case, I can actually go in here and just say run tests, and it'll set it up and do it automate. So that automation is really gonna be essential, I think, for my own peace of mind. I can sleep at night knowing that the systems are all basically functional. Um, and then not having to manually, test each feature, which is just a pain just a pain. So all that being said, so next week, I'm gonna finish up the uh, the scene loading, in-game scene loading and traversal, and after that, I think there's just one more feature I want to cover before I move on to everything else. It's the what I've done most recently is the level death reloading feature. Once I've covered that, I've covered pretty much the majority of the major features I've developed so far, and I have some sort of test class coverage around those features. And that was my main goal. So finishing up next week, I'll have that in place so I can actually get on to some implementing some new features. Um, but before that, I want to do the abstraction of the cameras, the pause menu, and the main menu, and retest that to make sure everything's working. So as a final, I will demonstrate all these tests that I've done working together in tandem, and you can see how it actually all works. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right, so this is what it looks like when you hit the Run All button. Takes a little bit to start doing its thing, but it'll start with an init test runner, and I have my logs here. It'll do its global loading tests, and now it starts in on the first one. AI tests, going through, and it kind of tells you which one it's doing at the first time. It's all doing this automatically with recorded data, setting the player position, marking certain times to assert tests at certain places. On to the next test. Just a handful of tests for each class before it moves on to the next one. Hitting cover, aiming around cover. And then going into the game load. This is recorded automation, recorded clicks, loading the game level. And then on to weapon equip, shooting, locomotion. It all kind of happens very fast, the last tests. But that is pretty much how it works. All green. And that's what we're going for. It's like, so I can just add a click of a button, see that most of the systems, the main functionality is working as it should. And of course, every time I come back to this, it's always broken. But I can just go and see, is the test case broken because of the things I changed, or is the functionality broken? And just slightly, it takes less time to actually just fix up these cases. They'll all be broken, but I can just quickly go back and fix them up again to their working state. So that's about it for all I had to say for this week, and we will keep working and catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.